The Mind of the Slave by H.L. Mencken. One of the forgotten divisions between men and men is that separating those who enjoy the work they have to do in the world and those who suffer it only as a necessary evil. The distinction, despite its neglect by psychologists, is probably very important, certainly far more important than the current divisions between producers and exploiters, dolichocephalic Nordic blondes and brachycephalic Mediterraneans, Darwinians and Christians, Republicans and Democrats, Protestants and Catholics. A man's politics, theology, and other vices engage his attention, after all, only in his moments of leisure, and the shape of his cranium has very little demonstrable influence upon what habitually goes on within it. But the nature of the work he does in the world conditions every thought and impulse of his life, and his general attitude towards it is almost indistinguishable from his general attitude toward the cosmos. At the one extreme lies the unmitigated slave, the man who has to spend his whole life performing tasks that are incurably uninteresting and that offer no soothing whatever to his vanity. At the other extreme is what Beethoven called the free artist, the man who makes a living with no boss directly over him, doing things that he enjoys enormously, and that he would keep on doing gladly, even if all economic pressure upon him disappeared. To the second category belong all the happiest men in the world, and hence, perhaps, all the most useful men. For what is done with joy is always better done, whether it be fashioning a material object, thinking out a problem, or kissing a girl. And the man who can make the rest of humanity pay him for being happy is obviously a better man than the general, or, at all odds, a luckier one. Here luck and superiority are one and the same. The fact that Joseph Conrad could write better than I was, in a sense, a matter of pure chance. He was born with his talent. He did not earn it. Nevertheless, it was just as real as if he had got it by Christian endeavor, and his superiority to me was thus perfectly genuine. The slave is always conscious of his slavery, and makes constant and often desperate efforts to mitigate it or to get rid of it altogether. Sometimes he seeks that mitigation in outside activities that promise to give him the sense of dignity and importance that his daily labor denies him. Sometimes he tries to give a false appearance of dignity to his work itself. The last phenomenon must be familiar to every American. It is responsible for various absurd devices to pump up lowly trades by giving them new and high-sounding names. I point, for example, to those of the real estate agent and the undertaker. Neither trade, it must be obvious, offers any stimulation to men of genuine superiority. One could not imagine a Beethoven, a Lincoln, or even a Coolidge getting any joy out of squeezing apartment house tenants or pickling odd fellows. Both jobs, indeed, fail to satisfy the more imaginative sort of men among those compelled to practice them. Hence, these men try to dignify them with hocus pocus. The real estate agent, seeking to conceal his real purpose in life, lets it be known grandly that he is an important, semi-public functionary, that he has consecrated himself to service and is a man of vision, and to prove it, he immerses himself in a private office with a secretary to insult his customers, joins Rotary, and begins to call himself a realtor, a word as idiotic as flu, pep, or gent. The ambitious washers of the dead, until very lately a sort of pariah in all civilized societies, like the hangman and the dog catcher, proceeds magnificently along the same route. At regular intervals, I receive impressive literature from a trade union of undertakers, calling themselves the Selected Morticians. By this literature, it appears that the members thereof are professional men of a rank and dignity comparable to judges or archbishops, and they are hot for the subtlest and most onerous kind of service, and even eager to offer their advice to the national government. In brief, the realtor complex all over again. I do not laugh at these soaring embalmers. I merely point out that their nonsense proves how little the mere planting of martyred lodge brothers satisfies their interior urge to be important and distinguished. An urge that is in all of us. But most of the trades pursued by slaves, of course, offer no such opportunities for self-deceptive flummery. The clerk working the line and cement warehouse of some remote town of the foreign missions belt cannot conceivably convince himself that his profession is noble. Worse, he cannot convince anyone else. And so, with millions of other men in this great republic, both urban and rural, millions of poor fellows doomed their life long to dull, stupid, and tedious crafts, the lower sort of clerks, truck drivers, farmers, petty officials, grabbers of odd jobs. They must be downright idiots to get any satisfaction out of their work. Happiness, the feeling that they too are somebody, the sense of being genuinely alive, must be sought in some other direction. In the big cities, that need is easily met. Here, there is a vast and complex machinery for taking the slave's mind off his desolateness of spirit, movie cathedrals to transport him into a land of opulence and romance, where men, whom he always identifies with himself, are brave, rich, and handsome, and women, whom he identifies with his wife, or perchance with her younger sister, are clean, well-dressed, and beautiful. Newspapers to delight and instruct him with their sports pages, their comic strips, and their eloquent appeals to his liberality, public spirit, and patriotism. Radio to play the latest jazz for him. Baseball, races, gambling, harlotry, and games in arenas. 1,000 devices to make him forget his woes. It is this colossal opportunity to escape from life that brings yokels swarming to the cities, not any mere lust for money. The yokel is actually far more comfortable on his native soil. The city crowds and exploits him, and 9 times out of 10 he remains desperately poor. But the city at least teaches him how to forget his poverty. It amuses him and thrills him while it's devouring him. But millions of the slaves, of course, must remain in the small towns or on the land. The cities can't absorb all of them, nor even half of them. Thus they confront the problem of making life bearable out of their own meager resources. The devices that they adopt, political, religious, and social, are familiar to all of us, and account fully, it seems to me, for some of the phenomena of American life that are most puzzling to foreign observers. The hoopla revival, with its psychopathological basis, the violent bitterness of rural politics, the prosperity of the clownish fraternal orders, the persistent popularity of barbarities of a dozen varieties, all these things are no more than manifestations of the poor hind's pathetic effort to raise himself out of his wallow, to justify and dignify his existence, to escape from the sordid realities that daily confront him. To snort and froth at a revival makes him conspicuous, prominent, a man of mark. It is therefore easy to induce him to do it. To hold a petty country office is eminence. Hence he struggles for it frantically. To belong to the red men gives him a mysterious and sinister dignity and fills him with a sense of power and consequence. He falls for it as quickly as a city intellectual falls for the Legion d'Honneur or an LL.D. All these things make him forget, at least transiently, that he remains a miserable worm and of little more actual importance on earth than his own hogs. Long ago, I suggested that a good way to diminish lynching in the South would be to establish brass bands in all the country towns. The bad music, I argued, would engage and enchant both the blackamoors and the poor white trash, and so discourage the former from crime and the latter from seeking a savage satisfaction in its punishment. I now improve and embellish that suggestion. That is to say, I propose that the band scheme be shelved, and that bullfighting be established as a substitute. Why not, indeed? Cattle have to be killed, and the southern poor white is admittedly a savage. Why not combine the necessary slaughter of horned quadrupeds with a show that will give that savage a thrill and take his mind from his lowly lot and turn him from seeking escape in politics, murder, and voodoo? Bullfights in the South would not only abolish lynchings, they would also undermine fundamentalism. Life would be safer and happier in Georgia if the pure Anglo-Saxons down there could work off their steam by going weekly to a plaza de toros and see official picadores, bandoleros, and matadors, all of them good Democrats and baptized men, lynch and burn, or even merely geld a reluctant and protesting male of boss tourists. This reading is dedicated to all customer service sales representatives, associate product managers, and assistant office scheduling coordinators.